This is Angela Ferguson. Her daughter babysits for me. She has driven my kids for me to and from their tumbling classes. She just reached out one day and was like, "How can I help?" And I heard more about her story and what she's been through. She's got a lot of kids like me, talented ones, and so I wanted to bring her on because she has a story to tell. So take it away, Angela. Tell us give us a little introduction on who you are first.
Okay. Um, okay, so I am married to Lance Ferguson. We will be celebrating like our 25-year anniversary this year. I know, it's crazy. I don't know, I have all the way from like 23, he's in college, culinary school, and then all the way down to like 8 is the youngest. And we do have a Kayla, that's kind of who we're talking about today. She followed Jada, so she would be 15.
Okay.
Her birthday was last week, or the week before, on the 11th, and then her angel day is the 18th.
Tell us the story of a Kayla. What was she like versus a little girl, a baby?
She she was a lot like my soccer player, like just very active, wanted, like, her favorite thing was Nerf guns, so she was always doing Nerf wars with her siblings. She was very like standoffish to a lot of people. Once you were in her circle, you were golden, but good luck getting her to even smile at you if you weren't. She was more like a girly tomboy. I don't know if that's a thing, but her nickname was Ladybug, like right from birth. It just kind of stuck, and then now it's become a thing. And so she loved playing games and reading. Like a lot of my kids would read. At the time we lived in a really like small home, and they all shared rooms, and it was crazy. And so they read to her at night or sang to her and stuff. And she hated shoes, like always barefoot. Didn't matter where we were, she would like take them off and throw them in the store because she hated wearing them. Yeah, she just, like, once you knew her, you were completely like hooked in.
Yeah.
So she just had a way of like, and it was like the ones who you would not expect, like the ones maybe suffering, or the ones that like maybe a single mom, or like one that didn't have kids, and that she always ended up
gravitating
being
towards.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
That's so interesting.
So
okay, so what happened to her? And you, I guess.
Yeah, January 2011, we had Issa's baptism, and then we had family in town, and then the week after was Kayla's birthday, and exactly a week after that, we were putting kids to bed, and it was a really good day. My mom was visiting, and one of those days where none of your kids were fighting. Like, there was no contention. That they're very rare. Like, it's like an anomaly of that happening, but for that day it happened, and everyone was going to bed. And Jada, my now 16-year-old, had ear infections and didn't want to sleep on the bed, so she was on the couch, and my husband was trying to get her settled and console her, and I went out to move our big van. It was like yours.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
A big Sprinter van.
I think it wasn't a Sprinter, it was like the bus. They called it the bus, the big red bus. And I went to move it into the carport because there was going to be a big storm. And we lived in this commercial area over by Colonial Flag, and so they didn't plow it very well, and so I'm like, okay, well, we need to move it. And I went out after prayers while he was dealing with my one daughter, and we thought that Kayla was still in there next to him, and she had followed me outside, and I didn't realize that she was outside, and ran her over in our driveway. So
in the big car,
and I thought it was like a bike or something. Like, I didn't realize that it was her until I like stop the van, and then, that gut feeling as a mom kicks in.
We begin with breaking news, a tragedy in Sandy.
A woman ran over her 2-year-old daughter tonight in their driveway. Police tell us that somehow the 2-year-old got out of the house and in the driveway as the mother was pulling the family van forward. Medical crews tried to save the girl, but she was pronounced dead at the scene.
We're going to investigate it and determine exactly what took place, but during our initial investigation, we don't believe anything happened other than a tragic accident here this evening.
Officer Arnold says the Sandy Police Department is offering all the resources it has to try to help comfort that family tonight.
What happened after that?
I scooped her up and we called the paramedics.
I don't mean to be like gruesome or detailed, but like there were no tires on her. Like you went all the way over her.
I went all the way over her with both tires.
Back and the front.
Yes. Because she had followed me around to the front, and it was an older van. It wasn't like, it didn't have the bells and whistles and, backup cameras or anything like that. It was like you just gauged and hoped you weren't running over a toy.
And in a car that big, it's just like a little lump. I mean,
yeah, it
it's
just felt like a speed bump.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, this is weird. Like, I didn't see any bikes or anything out when I moved it or like walked out. And so when I stopped the van, we had a really long driveway, and I had stopped the van at the end and looked back and realized that she was the bump, essentially. So,
But if you had gone over with both tires, wouldn't she have been in front of you?
She walked in front of the van, and then I, like, on the right side, and I had, like, she went under, and so I ran under both.
Okay. And you scooped her up?
Scooped her up, took her inside.
Was she already gone at that point?
No. No. She was, like, gasping and trying to breathe, and
so that's probably like the most traumatizing part, or was it not?
No.
It wasn't.
No, because she was obviously really bloody. There was she was covered, and I started yelling for Lance to like call the paramedics, and I had worked medical and was trying to like at least do what I could, but I was also hysterical at the same time, and it was hard because all of our kids were there, and they still were awake. So that's a whole nother set of like issues with our kids. So we ended up like trying to help her, and then the paramedics, like 3 fire departments, came really quickly, and they called Life Flight, and they tried saving her on the kitchen table. Were able to stabilize her enough. They were loading her in and into Life Flight, and it was hard because I couldn't hold her. They were testing me to make sure I didn't
like you were
do it on
under
purpose.
any substances.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And we hadn't told my family or anyone that I was pregnant because I had miscarried like a few months before, like 4 months before. So we weren't telling anybody. And then I had to tell everybody because I was sitting in an ambulance and had to just announce it to like, hey, guess what?
Oh my gosh.
So,
I mean, essentially, her little body had been crushed.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why she was gasping for air.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the biggest problem as far as trying to...
She had too extensive of internal bleeding.
I was going to say, when you said she was bleeding, it was probably
everywhere.
Her nose and ears.
Mouth and everything.
But not so much her body.
No. No. It was just...
internal coming out of exits. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So they life flighted her?
They loaded her into the Life Flight and we're about to take off and had to re-land because she coded.
And we didn't say, how old was she when this
She was 2, barely 2, a week after she
and just
turned
followed
2.
you outside.
I mean, I still didn't get to see her or anything, and that was hard. because they don't, when they have that much like extensive damage to their bodies, they don't let you pick them up. She was gone like before they could life flight her out.
So she coded, but and then died there in the helicopter, right in front of your house.
Yeah.
And like now you have not only the trauma of what you have essentially probably blamed yourself for years. How have you gotten through that? I mean, like, what did you do to cope?
It was hard at first, especially because they treated it like a crime scene.
Oh my gosh.
And so we couldn't go back into the house. We couldn't like go and get stuff. We had to send a representative to go in and get at least some clothes because I was covered and needed clothes and just, stuff. And it was all over the media and like news and stuff like that. And
just like insult to injury.
Yeah. And you got a lot of like, even a few years after, I got a lot of like still messages through social media and stuff of like how horrible I was that I did that.
Did you get to hold her?
I still didn't get to hold her, but we got to at least like be in there with her, hold her hand. They still wouldn't let me hold her.
Did they ever?
No.
Why?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. It's still, I wish.
That's something that's hard for you.
I remember just that day, like pleading, like, if you take this one, save her,
Oh, like
and
take the one in your belly.
Yeah. And now I look back and think, no, obviously that wasn't the plan.
But it was a mother's prayer, a mother's
it
pleading
was,
and desperation.
Yeah. And you take on like your kids' grief and guilt and, all of that. And so, and they've each had their own way of dealing with it. We found our village. Like they came out of the woodworks, like between the community, the ward, the stake, like our neighborhood, our family. We had strangers show up to her funeral. We had the fire department come and Life Flight come to her funeral. It was just one of those things that like, even the EMT or the dispatcher, the 911 dispatcher, just happened to be my sister's friend that got the call. Things that they just came in and stepped in and just took care of stuff that I'll never be able to repay everyone.
Right.
Or just
having. But you have for me. You have done the same for me. You've paid it forward for me.
Well,
you have showed up at my house with things. You have sent Issa. You've paid it forward.
Well, that was the one thing that growing up, my parents instilled that in me. Like, and honestly, if I'm serving, that's when I feel her the most.
Oh,
and it's usually my bad days that I'm like, oh my gosh,
How do you feel her?
A lot of it is like diving in, serving, figuring out who your village is and making sure that you rely on them. I was talking to my daughter in Hawaii about all of this. I'm like, I don't know what to say. I don't feel like I'm gritty,
Are you serious? You are. Just
well,
the fact that you got through that. And speaking of that, how did you in your heart, knowing that this was your fault, I mean, it was accidental, right?
Yeah.
How did you not beat yourself up? What did you do?
We ended up getting a blessing, and my husband and I, before we told our kids. And in the blessing, it talked about all kinds of stuff. But the one thing that he did say after the blessing was, I just want you to remember the one word that came out of that blessing, and it was nevertheless. Nevertheless. That's the only word and so sometimes when we're going through hard things, we remind each other, like, hey, nevertheless, because...
Which is what? In other words, what?
In other words, like, I know you want me to do this, and I know this is a really hard thing, and I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it because I know that that's what the Lord wants. Or
I
what.
love that.
And that has carried with me for a long time. That's when we started, okay, we're going to put them in dance, we're going to put them in ballroom or like soccer and like something, they have to have an outlet.
Yes, it's like a distraction, something to keep their mind. I do the same thing with tumbling and gymnastics. Put them in something that makes them feel a part of a team, that they're growing, that they are excelling, that there is purpose.
Yes. This was like at Issa's baptism a week before her birthday.
What do you do when those triggers come?
I usually try and like dive into serving someone because, and I also have to like, I have also learned that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to give yourself grace. It's okay because you can't have grace or you can't have the grit without the grace.
That's what we've talked about. We've talked about with, Teddy Parr, when I talked with her, she's like, grace with grit, we said, was great.
Yeah.
Because combined, it's great. You need both, the grit and the grace. This isn't a podcast about just being hardcore and I'm tough and I can do anything. It's about facing the hardship and the trauma and the sadness head on, whether you don't like it or not. It's nevertheless, we're pushing forward. And you're developing grit in the midst of hardship.
Yeah. One of the things too is like you don't see the big picture.
Yeah.
If we look at it now and think, okay, my husband traveled a lot for work at that time for his job. The week that she passed away was the only week in January that he was home. It's so much bigger, and we now know that like her 2 years here in heaven, I'm sure we raised our hand and weren't paying attention. Yeah. We're like, hey, yeah, what are we doing? And I'm telling Lance, put it back down. Like,
yes,
but
I felt that too.
Yes, like why did we sign up for that? But like to know that my kids automatically have that guardian angel.
I feel the same with my brother.
Yeah, and there have been like people that have reached out and said, hey, I just want you to know I was struggling and a ladybug landed on me and I just knew that she was there. And so those are the kind of things, like, don't ever be afraid to like tell someone when they've affected you or reach out or serve, or those are the biggest things that we've been able to like help us get through. And it's not always been willingly. It's always like, okay, I'm doing this because I want to feel her. I love that. I want like the blessings of her being with me. And it brings up a lot of questions for kids. Like kids are always curious about like, is she going to be as a kid? Is she going to be grown? Is she like...
Right. I've had those same questions with my brother who died. Like, is he in a, is he helping me right now?
I remember people used to tell me, you should get on depression meds and, for all of it. And I have nothing against it.
Right.
I, come from a family where it's genetic.
Yeah.
But I kept telling, it was my mom too. And she's like, just even to get you through. And I was like, but it's still going to be there.
Oh yeah.
That
it's
hurt.
Just a little Band-Aid.
Yeah. The hurt and all of that is still going to be there, and I'm still going to have to face it.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm currently on Zoloft right now to help me cope.
Right.
Also to help me not snap at my kids. At the same time, I've realized that even while taking it, sometimes you feel a little less.
Yeah.
And I wanted, like, the more you feel it out, the more it's come to the surface, it's released.
Yes.
And I feel like I'm kind of like putting the brakes on it, and I'm like, wait, no, but I want to feel it. I want to cry it out. I want to let it all out because it's release. It's being released. It's being like it's exiting my body. And if I'm taking something, yes, it helps me not to be so emotional. It helps me not to be so snappy with kids. But at the same time, I'm like, I could watch Schindler's List and not even cry.
Yeah.
And I don't like that part.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can't be crying all the time every day because I've got 7 other kids.
And I still take, my kids call it a Kayla med.
Oh.
Which is totally fine. I take lorazepam every now and then because I'll randomly run over a bump
the right way. Yeah, you don't even think about that. Like, I love that you're sharing it. It's not like you're spreading it to the world, but you just told me when I asked you. I lost my 2-year-old. And you told me what happened, and I was impressed by the fact that you owned the truth. You owned what had happened, as hard as it was, probably because of this whole nevertheless stuff. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And you're helping more people than you know.
Well,
a lot of people download this.
I was like, I don't know. I am not like
Yeah, you
And
absolutely are.
you
The
know.
fact that you're sharing it, you're sharing how you got through it, how you coped, what you did for your kids, what the triggers are, and how you are able to manage with that one word, that's going to help me. And that
Well,
word's going to help 100 other people.
Well, thanks.
So thank you.
Just
I just think
because-
that the Lord's going to consecrate the
Yes.
experience.
Yeah.
He does. He makes you better. It makes you fall on your knees because
Yeah.
you don't know what else to do.
And
then
yeah,
the first 4 words in testimony are test. All
Yeah.
along this was going to happen. We didn't know it, but all along this
Yeah.
was part of the plan.
and there's, my dad, we talk a lot about this because I'm currently dealing with my mom on hospice and handling that. And so we've talked about charitable proximities too, and how like those tender mercies of like, it's not by chance that, we became friends or whatever,
Right.
or that I ran into someone that maybe knew of a Kayla's
Yes.
whatever happened, or and now associates the ladybug with it. Like there's always charitable proximities of people that and that's part of the Lord's plan too. Like Him placing people in your life
Right.
that are meant to be there no matter what time
Yeah, they're
it
not
is
just
in your path.
coincidental.
No.
It's all part of the plan.
Yeah.
I have to give you a hug, though. I'm so sorry that happened. It's okay. It's so hard. Being gritty doesn't mean forgetting. It means come what may. You've done it. You've gone through the hardship. You've gone through the heartache and the pain, and you're still here.
Well, and it makes you think of like the word gritty itself, like how you feel after you've been at the beach. Like the gritty,
yes, I
grimy,
love that.
but it's like little tiny pieces of sand, and
they're stuck.
They're
Sometimes
stuck.
They're
and
in between your fingers.
That's how it builds.
Yes.
It's a little at a time. And
because it's still stuck on you. You can't brush all of it off. There's always sand in your backpack. There's always sand
places
in your
you don't want it.
Exactly, and that's part of it. It's still on you. It's still part of you, and you just move forward ahead anyway.
Yeah. One thing too that we never did, we never blamed each other. Like
so
it was almost just we blamed ourselves, and I still have that mom guilt.
Right.
You always do, because you were put on this earth to
protect and
and that's okay. It's okay to have that guilt.
Yeah.
Because it just speaks
it
about the love that you had for them.
And you're not letting it completely shatter you.
Right.
You're pretty.
Well,
You're a pretty girl.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.